Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Dinu Jeevandara from University of Moratuwa. Actually, we are from the Smart Grid Lab Department of Electrical Engineering, University of Moratuwa. So, first of all, I would like to thanks for Professor Udayanga Hemapala for giving me such an amazing opportunity to conduct this session. Uh, Today, the session is about battery energy management system in smart grid. Basically, here we are going to study about the existing energy storage system. So, the battery energy storage system especially, and the battery management system. Okay. Okay. First of all, I would like to talk about what are the problems associated with the conventional power system. Actually, these are the reasons why should move for the microgrid. The first problem is the electric power delivery system is often referred to as one of the greatest and most complex architectures. Actually, it consists of wires, transformers, generators, transmission lines, circuit breaker. There are a lot of huge complex architectures. Then the controlling and the maintenance cost will be very higher. The second problem is the existing electricity grid is unidirectional. That means the power and the information we can only flow in one direction. We cannot use the both direction. It's not a bidirectional system. The third one is the centralized power generation. Basically, the generation facilities are usually located away from the customers or end users. That means actually we have to use high voltage transmission line in order to transfer the power or energy for the customer. But when it's come to the decentralized power generation or distributed generation, we can generate electricity at or near to the customer. Then we don't need that much of transmission lines, and then it will reduce the loss of power loss during transmission. Then the bulk generation and heavily reliance on the fossil fuels. Basically, if you generate electricity via coal, LNG, diesel, or nuclear energy systems, then it will generate more environmental resource. Basically, there are four kind of environmental problems: air pollutant emission, that means carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, NOx, and the water usage. We need actually huge amount of water for the steam production and the cooling purpose, and the waste generation and the land use. We need a very large area for the bulk generation. And the cascading failure, basically, if one part of the system fail, it will turn all the part of the system all out. And also, finally, it will cause to fail them. And finally, limited automation. Yeah, these are the reasons why we should move for the microgrid. So, actually, what is microgrid? Microgrid is an electrical system that includes multiple loads and distributed energy resources that can be operated in parallel with the broader utility grid or as an electrical island. That means actually it's a separated network. We can generate electricity through the distributed energy resources, mainly renewable sources, solar and wind. But it is not full of renewable energy sources. Sometimes we have to use diesel generators or an energy storage systems in order to maintain the microgrid. So it is not the full of renewable energy sources, but sometimes we have to use conventional system also. And also there are two modes in microgrid. We can use as a grid connected mode, or we can use as islanded mode. That means we can connect to the grid, existing electricity grid, or otherwise we can use as a separate network. Suppose your demand in your microgrid, your demand is higher than supply. Suddenly your demand is increased than supply. Then what happens? That surplus energy we can get from the diesel generators, or otherwise we can get from the utility. But suppose your supply is higher than demand, then that excess energy we can be sold to the utility grid, or otherwise we can store in our battery energy storage system. That is why actually here we need diesel generators, energy storage systems, and also utility. Sometimes we need utility. That is why there are two modes available in the microgrid. Okay, and also if you use grid connected mode, then the controlling function, basically voltage and frequency regulations are done by the utility. But if you use as a separate network or islanded mode, then you have to control and maintain the function of the microgrid by yourself. Okay. It is a small scale power supply network that is designed to provide power for small community, basically for the homes, institutions, industrial and commercial buildings, we can use this microgrid. It enable local power generation for the local loads. Basically, we use solar and wind. Uh, it is connected to the both the local generating unit and the utility grid, thus preventing the power outage. And if you have excess power, we can be sold to the utility grid. I already explained. My grid components, you can see distributed generation, mainly renewable sources. Loads, we can use AC or DC loads. Immediate storage, that is the energy storage system. Actually, today's session is about this immediate storage. What are the existing energy storage systems? So, and the controller, I will explain what are the controllers we use in my grid. And the point of common coupling means that is a switch. Actually, it is like a switch. We can use as a grid connected mode or islanded mode by controlling the switch. Okay. Distributed generation and requirement of the energy storage. Actually, distributed generation, I already explained, we can generate electricity in a small scale at or near to the where it will be used or customer. It will significantly reduce the loss in transmission line. And also we have some problems in distributed generation. Distributed generation is connected to the low voltage distribution level and provide the DC voltage or variable frequency AC output. They require power electronic devices. That means actually suppose you are going to use solar generation, then the output of the solar will be a DC output. But for your AC load, we cannot directly connect our DC output. That is why we need DC to AC converter. And also suppose we are going to use wind energy generation, then the output will be a variable frequency AC output. Then we have to use AC to AC converter to get the constant AC output. Likewise, we have to use some power electronic interfaces in order to transfer the power for the loads. That means, okay. And the second thing is the output of the renewable energy sources fluctuate with the weather condition. You know that thing actually. We cannot get the constant output because of the output is fluctuated with the weather condition. And the third one is in conventional power system, the inertial energy balance of a new load is taken care by the power stored in the generator, inertia. But most of the power electronic interfaces, distributed generation unit are inertialess. That is the very very huge problem in this distributed generation. That means actually, if you suddenly if your demand is increased than supply, so that surplus demand or surplus power we can withstand by the generators in the conventional system, because each and every generators we have a reserve capacity. We can use that reserve capacity in order to fulfill our requirement. But when it comes to the distributed generation, we don't have generators. We have power electronic interfaces. They don't have that much of reserve capacity. Then, if the demand is increased than supply suddenly, then we cannot do anything. That is why actually we use energy storage system. So basically, especially battery energy storage system, in order to withstand that demand increase. And also the existing power electronic interfaces are inertialess. They don't have that much of reserve capacity. Okay, the fourth one is the Ford level is very higher in distributed system than the conventional system. Why energy storage in microgrid? Basically, the first thing is the save money. Actually, that means suppose in your microgrid, your supply is increased than the demand. Then what to do? That means if you use an in islanded mode, you cannot connect to the grid. If you don't have a battery energy storage system, then that excess amount of energy we have to release to the atmosphere as a heat. We cannot do anything. We cannot store the energy. We cannot sold to the utility grid also if you use islanded mode. That is why actually we need an energy storage system. Save energy means save money and improve reliability and resilience. You know that thing, integrate diverse resources, reduce environmental impact. Okay. Now move to the existing energy storage system in market. Basically, there are three categories. I categorized three applications. Transportation application, basically electric vehicles. What are the use energy storage systems, emergency application, and the large scale application like microgrid. In the microgrids, we can use battery energy storage system, or compressed air energy storage system, flywheel energy storage systems, pump hydroelectric, superconducting magnetic energy storage system, ultra capacitor. So our session is about this battery energy storage system because that is the most preferred technology in order to store the energy. I will explain why that is most preferred technology. These are the positive features of the battery energy storage system than the other energy storage systems. The possibility of implementation in medium scale unit. Long life cycle. Actually, life cycle mean if you buy a press battery from the manufacturer or some shops, actually each and every battery cells we have a life cycle. Some of the batteries has nearly approximately 2000 life cycles, but some of the batteries has 20,000 life cycles. Actually, life cycle mean actually how much time we can charge and discharge the battery. So if your press battery have 2000 life cycle, if you charge and discharge one time, then your life cycle will be reduced one time. So that is a life cycle. And the higher discharge time, shorter response time, competitive cost, these all are positive features. High round trip efficiency, commercially availability. There are a lot of battery technologies also available. We have lithium ion battery technology, nickel cadmium, lead acid, sodium sulfur, high discharge rate, high recharge rate. But actually in Sri Lankan context, most probably we use lead acid or lithium ion batteries. So here the comparison of the battery energy storage system technologies. Actually, I compare only lithium ion and lead acid batteries. So if you check the characteristic of lead acid or lithium ion battery, you can see according to the characteristic, lithium ion battery technology is the most preferred technology in order to store the energy. Energy density mean actually how much energy we can store in the battery, specific energy. Depth of discharge, actually DOD. Actually, there are three terms in battery that mean depth of discharge is one term, the depth of discharge, DOD, and the next one is the SOC level, the state of charge level, and the state of health level, SOH level. Actually, if you buy a press battery from the shop or manufacturer, then we can assume the inner, that means the available charge level of the battery is 100%. That is the SOC level, the available charge level of the battery. But in real time condition, we cannot buy 100% SOC level battery because each and every battery has a self discharge rate, or we can say the leakage current. That means if you keep the battery somewhere, it will automatically discharge due to this self discharge rate. So we cannot find SOC level 100% battery when we're going to buy from the shops. But SOC, assume now you have 100% SOC level. Then if you discharge the battery, it reach to 70%. Assume like that. Then your SOC level is 70%. That is the available charge level of the battery. Depth of discharge naturally how much you reduce from the charge. That is the 30%. That's the depth of discharge. And the other term is the SOH level, state of health level. Actually, it is depend on the life cycle of the battery. That means initially we have, if suppose we have 2000 life cycles, then if you discharge the battery to 50 percentage SOC level, or like that, if you discharge the battery several times, suppose now the life cycle of the battery will be is 1000 life cycles, then your SOH level will be 50%. It is depend on the health of the battery. It is depend on the life cycle of the battery, state of health level, and the efficiency, the replacement time frame, maintenance cost, and other thing is temperature range of charge. Actually, there are three parameters we need to consider when charging or discharging. That means we have to consider the temperature, voltage, and the current of the battery. That means when charging or discharging, we should maintain this temperature range, current range, and voltage range. Otherwise, what happens? That means you have a minimum voltage level and maximum voltage level. and minimum current level, maximum current level, and the temperatures also. So if you charging or discharging the battery beyond this temperature, voltage, or current limit, then your life cycle will be rapidly reduced. That means if you charge or discharge the battery one time, then in normal condition, in usual condition, it will only reduce one life cycle. If you charge and discharge one time, but if you charge and discharge one time but beyond this temperature, current or voltage level, then what happen? It will reduce 2 or 3 times the life cycles. That is why we have to maintain this temperature range, voltage and current range when charging or discharging. Sometimes it will cause to explode the batteries also. Okay. Then you can see the lithium ion. So I select the lithium ion technology for this study. We have lithium ion chemistries also. That means under the lithium ion battery technology, we have some lithium ion chemistries. The first chemistry is lithium cobalt oxide, and the LFP, NCA, LMO, NMC, LTO. Likewise, we have a lot of technology chemistries. If you compare the characteristic of this lithium ion chemistries, specific energy, if you compare the specific power, safety, performance, lifespan, or cost, then the most preferred lithium ion chemistry is the NMC chemistry. You can see all the parameters are very high. Actually, here cost mean specific energy is higher. Cost mean actually it represents the actually if the cost is higher, that means it is very cheap. Okay, that means actually the most expensive lithium ion chemistry in this slide is the LTO. Okay, likewise I categorize these lithium ion chemistries. So, but in the existing, that means a market available lithium ion rechargeable batteries, most of the batteries as comes to the market as a hybrid technology. That means they have NMC chemistry as well as some other chemistries also. They have a combination of chemistries, but basically they use NMC chemistry because their characteristic is very higher than other chemistries. Okay. What is BMS? Actually, that is our session, battery management system. Actually, battery management system is an electronic circuit is used to protect the batteries and enhance the life of the batteries. I already explained how to enhance the life of the batteries. That means if you maintain the temperature, current, and the voltage range when charging or discharging, it will enhance the life of the batteries. It is okay. And protect the batteries mean actually like that. That means each and every battery cells that we have a battery model like transformers, generators. They have some equivalent circuit model. You know that one. Uh, Likewise, for the batteries also, we have a equivalent circuit model. It contains some resistance and capacitance that models. So if you pass the current through this battery model or battery cell, then I squared R loss will be happen. Power loss will be happen. Actually, that power will release to the atmosphere as a heat. So if we use higher charge or discharge current, then what happens? This I squared R loss will be very higher. Then that heat generation is very higher. Due to that heat, the battery can be damaged or battery can be exploded because of this uh, very huge amount of heat. So we have to consider. That is why we can protect the batteries and we can enhance the life of the batteries through this battery management system. You can see the what are the function of battery management system, or we can classify the battery management system according to the features. So the first feature, you know, that mean over or under voltage protection. I already explained. We have a minimum voltage level and maximum voltage level. Over current protection and over or under temperature protection. We have to maintain that voltage, current, and the temperature. We have upper limit and the lower limit. So all of the basic level, mid-level, low, advanced level BMS, we have this feature. The second feature is the passive cell balancing. Actually, that means cell balancing means if you buy a press battery from the manufacturer, then I already explained we cannot buy 100% SOS level battery because of the self-discharge rate. If you buy a Same battery, same manufacturer, same model, same capacity, same voltage, current, temperature, limit batteries, three batteries from the manufacturer. Still, they have one unique feature, that is their chemical composition inside the battery. According to that chemical composition, they have a different leakage current. They have a different self-discharge rate. That means one battery can be 100% SOC level, one battery can be 98%, 97%. Their voltage level also different. The maximum voltage level of the battery cell can be 4.2 volt. Minimum voltage can be 2.7 volt. For some batteries, it is 2.3 volt. Suppose that means we have a 4.2 volt maximum open circuit voltage, but when you buy a new or newer batteries from the manufacturer, or same batteries from the manufacturer, but still their voltage level are different because of their self-discharge rate. Then if you discharge the battery, what happens? One battery will discharge first before other batteries. Then actually, if one battery is reached its minimum voltage level or minimum SOC level, 0% SOC level, it will disconnect the discharger because of the under voltage protection is there. According to the under voltage protection, if one battery reaches to its minimum voltage level, then it will disconnect the discharger. So we cannot discharge the other two batteries to the minimum voltage level because now our discharge is almost discharge. Our discharge is almost stopped. So then what happens? If you charge the battery cells again, then that voltage gap between the battery cell will be increased. Likewise, that means likewise this battery voltage gap will be multiply increased time to time. So we cannot use the full capacity of the battery because of that. That is why actually we need cell balancing concept. That means at the full discharge time, then the passive cell balancing, we have two concepts, passive cell balancing and active cell balancing. Passive cell balancing actually at the full discharge time or full charge level, we can release that excess amount of energy of the other two batteries to the atmosphere as a heat until the all of the battery is associable like equilibrium. So the active cell balancing naturally, we can transfer that excess amount of energy of the other two batteries. The first one battery will discharge full discharge, but other batteries are not like that. So that other batteries, that excess amount of energy we can transfer among the all of the battery cell until the SOC level of the each and every battery cells are equilibrium. That is the active cell balancing. It is very efficient because we didn't waste our energy. But in passive cell balancing, it is not effective, but very simple because we excess amount of heat or excess amount of energy we dissipated to the atmosphere as the heat. So that cell balancing concepts are only available in the mid-level and advanced level battery DMS. The third one feature is the basic state of charge estimation. State of charge means actually SOC level. I already explained actually what is the SOC level, available charge level. To estimate that value, we have different mathematical models. I will explain what are the available battery mathematical models. The next feature is the advanced algorithm for the SOC and SOH level estimation, state of charge and state of health level. Thermal management system, basically to control the temperature of the battery, we can use this thermal management system. To control the temperature, we can use heat sink, we can use liquid cooling system, or the force cooling system like fans we can use, or we can use some thermoelectric cell tie modules. There are a lot of cooling systems available. We will discuss later. And the next one is CAN or RS-485 communication protocols. Basically, that means each and every BMS, we have a mic controller or we have a IC, integrated circuit, to connect the input-output peripherals. Like we have some sensors to measure the temperature, we have temperature sensors. To measure the voltage current, we have voltage and current sensors. To connect these sensors or to connect this, we have some LCD displays to monitor our data. We have some charging, chargers, dischargers, LED bulbs we have in microgrids. So to connect this input-output peripherals with the mic controller, we have to use some communication protocols. So these are those protocols. I will explain later what are the available communication protocols. And the last feature is the advanced data analysis. It is only available in the advanced level BMS. Okay. This is the BMS classification based on the topology. There are three topologies: distributed BMS, modular BMS, or centralized BMS. That means actually distributed BMS mean actually in the battery system we have some series and parallel connected battery cells. Each and every battery cells we have a BMS. That is a distributed BMS. There are a lot of merits and demerits there. The merits mean actually precise measurement. We can accurately measure the temperature, current, and voltage, everything. Connection reliability, expansion versatility mean actually we can easily expand the circuit and the battery system. That means if we need to add another battery cell, then we can easily add that battery cell with the BMS, because each and every battery cell we have a BMS. And also they have a demerits also: higher complexity, need higher packaging space, higher cost also. And the modular BMS actually we call the master slave BMS. Each, that means the battery system, every battery module we have a slave BMS. We make it normal BMS. Actually, battery module mean actually it is a series connected battery system. Each and every battery module we have a one BMS, and also middle of the battery system we have a master BMS. Then slave BMS will report to the master BMS. That is why we call it master slave BMS. Centralized BMS, that means for the whole battery system we have only one BMS. Okay, that is the BMS classification based on the topology. Okay, this is the lithium-ion battery protection. I already explained this one. That means for a healthy or lone living battery system, we have to maintain the temperature range, voltage range, and the current level when charging or discharging the battery. We have over or under voltage protection. We have over current protection, over or under temperature protection, short circuit protection, open circuit protection. So we have to consider that one. And the battery cell balancing, I already explained. Passive cell balancing and active cell balancing. Passive cell balancing means actually that extra charge will dissipate it in the form of heat. Basically, it is very cost effective, easy to implement, but we can use only for the low power application. Active cell balancing is efficient, costly, complex. That means extra charge of the cells will be transferred to the lesser charge cells until all of the source level of the battery cells are equilibrium. Here we use for the high power applications. We already explained what is the cell balancing concept. Okay, this is the passive cell balancing, the circuit diagram. Actually, each and every battery cells we have this kind of cell balancing circuit. Suppose this battery cell, then the actually here to dissipate the excess amount of power or energy from this battery cell, we use the small resistance and also MOSFET. The R29, R28, R27, these are the dissipating resistance. We call the resistance dissipating resistance. And the Q14, Q13, Q12, these are the MOSFET. If the MOSFET is turned on, then that current will be flow through this circuit. Then at the resistance, it will create I squared R power loss. So likewise, we can release the excess amount of power through this resistance as a heat to the atmosphere. So if the MOSFET is turned off, then we can stop the dissipating. To turn on and turn off the MOSFET, we use gate signal from here. If the gate signal is 1, MOSFET will be turned on. Then the excess amount of power of the battery cells will be dissipated as a heat through this resistance. And if the gate signal is 0, it will stop dissipating. Okay. And here we have a Zener diode to provide the constant input for the MOSFET, and also the 5.6 volt constant voltage. This R46, R45, and the R62, C31, like us, we have some resistance and capacitance in this circuit. Basically, they are used as the noise attenuators
or sometimes we use as a low pass filtering purposes. Okay. How to decide the value of balancing current? Actually, in this circuit, we can calculate this balancing current uh, because we know the maximum open circuit voltage of the battery. I already explained this 4.2 volt maximum voltage of the battery, and the resistance we have a 33 ohm resistance. We can assume here the voltage drop of the MOSFET is negligible. Then we can easily current the balance current. Balance current equal to cell maximum voltage divided by balance resistance. Then we can calculate the dissipated power through this resistance. It is equal to I squared R. Balance current is squared of the balance current into the balance resistance. Then our power rating of the resistance should be higher than this dissipated power. And the voltage rating of the MOSFET should be 2 or 3 times the cell maximum voltage. The current rating of the MOSFET should be 2 or 3 times the balance current. Likewise, we can select this MOSFET ratings, voltage and current rating, and also the resistance power rating. Okay. And the other thing is this cell balancing can be occurred at 3 states of the battery. One stage I already explained, at the over discharge condition, we can apply the cell balancing, or the overcharge condition we can apply, or middle state of the battery, we can apply cell balancing concept. It is happened due to the self-discharge rate, unique self-discharge rate of the battery. Okay. Now we are going to study about the how to measure the battery cell voltage, current, temperature, and also the SOC level, state of charge level. Basically, cell voltage measurement is required for what? There are 4 requirements. We can see over voltage fault sensing. We have to find the available voltage level of the battery to avoid the over voltage fault or under voltage fault. And the balancing algorithm, we need battery voltage, cell voltage, and the state of charge estimation also we need. I will explain why we need voltage for the state of charge estimation. Actually, each and every battery cells, battery voltage we are going to measure. That means in this circuit, we can see this is the real, that means real circuit. If you need to measure the battery voltage of the any kind of battery, then only we have to, this is the IC actually, only we have to find the voltage gap between VC5 and VC3 pins. So if you know the voltage drop, voltage gap, voltage difference between these 2 pins, then we can find this voltage of the battery cell. Then we have to reduce actually voltage drop of the R1 and R2 resistance. Actually, why we use R1 and R2 resistance? Actually, the resistances are used to protect the IC inputs from the inrush current during hot plug in. That means when charging or discharging, inrush current will be generated. Then our IC will be damaged due to this inrush current. That is why we use R1 and R2 resistance here. And also we can use this resistance and capacitance as our noise attenuators of the circuit. And also we have 2 capacitors. The other capacitor we can use for the that means C3 capacitor we can use for the low voltage, low pass filtering purposes. Actually, we call these capacitors as decoupling capacitors. Okay. Now we are going to about battery pack current measurement. Basically, the battery pack current measurement is required for overcurrent faults detection, short circuit fault detection, and state of charge estimation. There are 2 methods we can use to measure the battery pack current. Current sense resistor based method or Hall effect current sensing based method. Actually, current sense resistor based method mean actually we can use sun resistor. Sun resistor mean actually it is a resistance which has very low resistance values. If you connect this sun resistor through the circuit to the battery system, then we can measure the voltage drop of this sun resistor. If we know the voltage drop of this sun resistor, the resistor values we know it is very low value, then we can calculate the battery pack current. It is very low cost, easy to apply, used for the low current application. But when it comes to the Hall effect current sensing method, it is isolated type current sensing method. We don't need to connect this sensor with our current carrying conductor or our battery system. We don't need to connect. the isolated type method. So it is very costly, complex, but we can use for the high current application. Okay, I will explain more details about these two methods. This is the current sense resistor based method. I already explained a low resistance value and high power rated resistor. We call the sun resistor is required to measure the battery pack current. If the current pass through this resistor, then the current can be calculated by measuring the voltage drop of the resistor. The voltage measured across the resistor is sensed and amplified through the op amp and later goes into the ADC. We call the analog to digital converter of microcontroller. This amplification can be external or internal according to the microcontroller. Actually, you can see, I will explain. You can see this circuit. This is the battery system. We have a sun resistor with the resistance value is 500 micro or 0.5 milliohm. But you can see that according to the calculation or according to this example, the sense voltage. Actually, we have to first we have to measure the voltage of this system. If you know the voltage, then we can find the current of the system. This voltage is very low. You can see sense voltage is 0.031 volt. And also this voltage signal will be an analog signal. But for the microcontroller, this value should be close to the microcontroller. Microcontroller, we need digital signals. That is why actually here we use analog to digital converter in the middle point. In here we have to use the analog to digital converter. The input value of input voltage of the analog to digital converter should be 5 volt or 3.3 volt. But the sense voltage is a very low value. That's why actually we use here amplification or op amp in order to increase this sense voltage to 5 volt or 3.3 volt. So suppose we need to increase this sense voltage to the 5 volt, then we can calculate the required gain for the op amp. ADC input voltage is 5 volt, sense voltage is this much. Then 160 gain is needed. And also for the op amp, we know to calculate the op amp gain by using this equation 1 plus RF divided by RI. RF mean actually R4 here, RI mean R3. So if we know the required gain should be equal to op amp gain, then if we know the op amp gain, we can find this one parameter RF or RI, we can calculate. It's a calculation part. So that's why actually we need op amp in order to increase the voltage to provide to use as an input to the ADC analog to digital converter. And also we have some other resistance R1, R2, R3, C1, C2. We have a lot of resistance and capacitance in this circuit. These values actually we use as noise attenuators for low pass filtering purposes. Okay. The next is the current sensing with Hall effect sensor. This techniques is purely isolated, means that no need to pass high current path in series with the sensor. There's no power dissipation because we didn't connect the sensor with our current carrying conductor. Useful for high power application, and it can sense both AC or DC current because we have AC sensors and DC sensors also. In this sensor, we have a Hall element, or we can say the Hall effect generator. It fits inside the gap of the core, and it will generate a voltage which is proportional to this primary current of the current carrying conductor. So if we know this voltage, we can find this primary current or battery current. Actually, this sense voltage also very low value. That is why before going to the microcontroller, we need to pass through the analog to digital converter. For the analog digital converter, we need 5 voltage or 3.3 voltage. That is why we use a op amp to increase the voltage. Okay, the same thing. When a current carrying conductor is placed into the magnetic field, a voltage will be generated perpendicular to both the current and the field. According to the current of the conductor, proportional voltage will be generated in this Hall element. Okay, this we call the Hall effect, and this voltage we can call the Hall voltage. Okay, now I'm going to the how to find this primary current or the battery current from this circuit, from this Hall effect sensor. Actually, here we have an equation for that. for each and every Hall effect sensor, we have a data set, unique data set. So if you refer this data sheet, we can easily download from the internet or any other sources, HAB 120 VSP5 data sheet. If you refer this data sheet, there is a one of data sheet for the Hall effect sensor. Then the measured, assume the measured voltage of the this Hall element. That voltage, generated voltage is 3.75 volt. So in this data set, according to the data set, we have for that specific Hall effect sensor, we have offset voltage. We have there's a 2.5 volt, and also we have sensitivity G, 10 millivolt per ampere. This Hall effect sensor, the supply voltage always should be 5 volt. Then we see supply voltage. Then we know these things. Then we have equation to calculate the input current of the sensor, IP is equal to 5 divided by Vc into the V out minus V naught into the 1 over sensitivity. So we can easily find the primary current if you know the supply voltage always 5 volt. That is a supply voltage for the sensor. V out mean actually measured voltage. We know that one. Zero mean offset voltage we can get from the data sheet. G also we can get from the data sheet. Likewise, we can find the primary current. And the next part is the battery pack temperature measurement. Each and every battery cells should be maintained at the desired temperature range for their longer life cycle and safety purposes. I already explained. If you maintain the temperature and also voltage and current level, it will enhance the life cycle of the battery. Typical operating temperature range is 50 degrees of Celsius to 45 degrees of Celsius when charging or discharging. You have to maintain this temperature range. Actually, it is depend on the battery cells. Actually, we have to check the battery cell data sheet. Then we can get this typical operating temperature range. Temperature of the battery pack usually measured by the temperature sensors we call the NTC thermistors, negative thermal coefficient thermistors. So in thermistor, I mean actually it's a solid state temperature sensing device which act as temperature sensitive electrical resistor. That means actually NTC thermistors have a negative electrical resistance with the temperature. That means if you if you have if you connect the thermistor with the circuit, it will create the resistance values. According to the circuit, it will create a resistance values. According to that resistance values, we can calculate the temperature of the system because the resistance is generated inversely proportional to the temperature of the system. And 10 kilo ohm NTC thermistor mean actually that is the how we find these thermistors at the 25 degrees of Celsius. What is the available resistor value of the thermistor? It is 10 kilo ohm. You can see the thermistor curve. 10 kilo ohm NTC thermistor mean at the 25 degrees of Celsius, what is the available resistance of the thermistor? So to calculate the resistance values or to calculate the temperature value, we have equation. So we can easily refer this data sheet of the thermistor. This data sheet, the part number is 10380. So if you check the 10380 sensor product number, then the R25 is equal to 10 kilo ohm. That means at the 25 degrees of Celsius, you have 10 kilo ohm resistance for this thermistor. And also we have some B value, we call the temperature coefficient 3435. So first actually we need to find what is the available resistance of the NTC. But we can use this kind of circuit for that. So if you supply the 5 volt for this sensor, then this according to this voltage dividing method, if you measure the output voltage, we can find this RTH. That is the available resistance of the NTC. If you know this RTH, R naught T naught mean actually 25 degrees Celsius and its resistance 10 kilo ohm. B value we can find from the data sheet. Then we can calculate the what is the available temperature of the system. That's a method. Okay. Now we go into the battery SOC level estimation. There are we have different methods. We have 4 categories under the battery SOC level estimation. Direct measurement methods, we have bookkeeping estimation, adaptive system, and hybrid methods. Under the direct measurement method, we have some mathematical models: open circuit voltage method, terminal voltage method, impedance method, impedance spectroscopy method. Under the bookkeeping estimation, we can use Coulomb counting method or modified Coulomb counting method. Adaptive system, we have deep learning, support vector mechanism, fuzzy neural network, or Kalman filter also we can use. And also we have some hybrid methods also. So basically, most commonly and very famous method is the Coulomb counting method. It is very simple, easy to implement, but it's not very accurate because it has a lot of drawbacks and limitations. I will explain those things. That's why in electric vehicles, so microgrid, basically we use Kalman filter algorithm. That is one of accurate algorithm. Okay. This is the Coulomb counting method, or we can say the ampere hour counting or current integration method. This is the widely used technique for the SOC level estimation. The SOC of a battery can be calculated by integrating the charging current or discharging current, or both charging and discharging current over the operating period. You can see the equation of SOC level. We can calculate any time SOC level we can calculate by using SOC T0, that is the initial SOC level. C rated mean the rated capacity of the battery. IB mean the charge or discharge current, and time we need. If we know the current and time, we can easily find this integrated part. That means time we can measure by using a real-time clock. Current we can usually measure by using current sensor. C rated mean we can get from the dataset, that is the rated capacity of the battery cell. This is the hard part. That means it is very difficult to find this initial SOC level. In this example, it already given this value, but in practically real-time condition, we don't know this value. We have to find this initial SOC level. For that, actually, we have different methods. We have basically 2 methods: charge and discharge method, or we can use the open circuit voltage SOC level curve in order to find this initial SOC level. However, we can calculate, but it is not very accurate. The first limitation is this initial SOC level. We don't have an accurate method for that. And also we have some other limitations. When the battery is charging or discharging, it will not charge or discharge 100%. There will be a 2 or 3% losses during a full cycle, but that loss is not considered in this method. That's one of limitation. A very high accurate current sensing is required. That means assume the tolerance of current sensor is plus or minus 2%. Then every time SOC level estimation, this estimated SOC level will be tolerance of plus or minus 2%. Over the period of time, that value will be multiplied. And the leakage factor of the battery is not considered. That means self-discharge rate, we didn't consider in this method. Or leakage current, we didn't consider. Last limitation is the temperature factor is not considered. That means actually, when we charge or discharge the battery internal temperature will be highly varied. But that variation we didn't consider in this method. And also some of the parameters of the battery voltage, battery SOC level, battery resistance, battery parameters, they are highly dependent on this internal temperature. But that internal temperature we don't have in this equation, we don't have a temperature value or temperature parameter. That is other limitation. So now we can see the BMS IC selection and microcontroller selection. Basically, for the BMS, some of the BMS, that means low voltage application, like we have some small toys. For that kind of small application, we can only use IC. We don't need microcontroller for the BMS. We can use a small IC. But for the large application, large voltage application, no mid voltage level application, like electric vehicles or microgrid, we have to use microcontroller than the ICs. Microcontrollers are expensive than ICs. So this is how to find the IC. When selecting ICs for BMS, following parameters should be concerned. Battery cell chemistry, I already explained what are the chemistries of the lithium-ion chemistries, I already explained. Based on that, our IC will be different. Number of cells in series, protection, what protection we need, over or under voltage protection. There are a lot of protection we can provide. Balancing, is it active or passive cell balancing? Monitoring, voltage monitoring, current monitoring, temperature monitoring. What is the needed monitoring parts? A source level estimation method is you are going to use uh, command filter or Coulomb counting. Based on that, our IC will be different. And FET control or MOSFETs basically for the cell balancing, fault detection. Interfacing protocols mean actually basically communication protocols, and the external mic controller required. So there are two type of ICs available in the market: automotive grade IC and the industrial grade IC. Both ICs are expensive, little bit expensive. So to find the proper IC for mic controller, we can refer we have some of the website. So here I create a small video to find how to find the ICs and mic controllers in Texas Instrument website. But for a time being, I'm not going to play it. But you can simply you can see here from this website you can find here you can see these are the ICs, available ICs and their features. You can see what are the available features of them and number of series cells we can connect to this IC and the ratings, package group, approximate price, each and everything, and also designing also how to connect this IC with the mic controller, BMS. Those that designing MATLAB model also we can find from this Texas Instrument website under the battery protectors. And also mic controls also we can find. So I'll just skip this part for time being. And this is the mic controller selection for the BMS. Actually, mic controller for BMS is selected based on the complexity of the BMS. I already explained. For the low voltage application, we don't need mic controller. We only can use ICs, because with the IC also we can provide protection, cell balancing, monitoring, everything we can provide. Only mic controllers we need for the BMS for the mid voltage application, no high voltage application. Selection technique of mic controller. We have to consider the mic communicate interface with IC with the mic controller, number of ADC channels, analog to digital converters, and the frequency, number of bits for selection, number of input output peripherals devices, and the number of input analog code digital inputs, control pins, how much control pins we need. Is it auto grade or industrial grade mic controller? So based on that, we have to select the mic controller. For the mic controller selection also, we can use that previously explained website. You can refer it very easily. You can find the mic controllers and ICs. And also you can see this communication protocols. That means to connect the ICs with the BMS or mic controller, we can use UART communication, I2C communication, or SPI communication. To connect the charger with the BMS, we can use CAN communication. To connect the current sensor with the BMS, we can use ADC or I2C communication. EEPROM mean actually memory capacity. RTC mean real-time clock, LCD display, GSM or Bluetooth. Basically, we use GSM and Bluetooth to transfer our real-time data to the online interfaces. For that, we can use UART communication. Temperature sensors, I2C communication we can use. So these are the communication protocols we use in order to connect the input-output peripherals with the BMS. This is the last part of this session, battery models. Actually, battery modeling mean actually it is a mathematical model. Battery modeling uses a mathematical model of a virtual battery to verify that the BMS will work properly for the corresponding battery pack. With the battery model, actually battery model mean like generators or transformers. For the batteries also we have equivalent circuit model. That model we have some resistance and capacitance values. With that we can find the SOC level, we can calculate the battery cell voltage level, current level, temperature, SOC level, Everything we can find this through this battery modeling. That is how then we can understand whether our batteries working properly or not. Another thing is we can we can get prediction for the battery. That means we can predict the future SOC level, future voltage of the battery through the battery modeling. So that is why battery modeling is essential for the battery. There are three battery models. That means we have electrical battery models, thermal battery models, so hybrid battery models, combination of electrical and thermal, electrothermal battery models. So these are the existing electrical battery models: equivalent circuit model, electrochemical model, empirical model, data-driven model. Basically, the second order RC equivalent circuit model is the most preferred or most accurate battery model in the under the electrical battery models. Then I compare the pros and cons of the electrical models. In the thermal models also you can see heat generation models, heat transfer, reduced order thermal models, data-driven models. So actually, our next session will be about this these battery models under the Mybrit modeling section in this webinar series. I will arrange another session for the battery models, the electrical, thermal, and combination of battery models, and also battery parameter identification. Basically, that means each and every battery models we have to find some battery parameters. We have some resistance and capacitance. We have to find that values. So theoretically, we can easily find these battery parameters by developing a simulation, a MATLAB simulation. But when it comes to the experimental procedure, we have to test on the batteries. We should perform some tests on the battery cells in order to find these battery parameters. We have different tests. We can use constant current, constant voltage, charge test, constant current discharge test, pulse discharge test, hybrid test. There are a lot of tests available. According to that, we can find these battery parameters. We have some methods. We have least square method. We have MATLAB curve fitting tools we can use. There are a lot of things to discuss. And also thermal management system I will explain. I didn't explain here what are the available cooling system and their advantage and disadvantages. So that is okay, this is end of this sessions, and we will meet again for our next session with our next session. And thanks for participating and listening. Okay, thank you very much. If you have any question, please put on our chat box. Thank you.